appreciate Dr. Rashid's efforts, his team efforts, and particularly the response we received from people who have their hearts always sympathetic towards international issues. To begin with, Kashmiri issue is not a matter of dispute between Pakistan and India. It's an international issue. It's an issue of human right. I call it a matter of systematic demographic genocide by a country, and that's a crime against humanity. Therefore, those friends and colleagues who have joined, I greatly appreciate their responsiveness, and I believe that with their cooperation, we can inshallah move forward towards Kashmir policy. The fact of the matter is that Pakistan has not been able to play its active role till now, but we as academicians believe that university should be a hub of such issues. We should discuss and deliberate these issues, not only for awareness, but to come forward with our academic assistance in clarifying the issue and ultimately its resolution. The only resolution I see is plebiscite. There is no question less than plebiscite for Kashmir issue.
August 5, you know very well, 2019, the government of India revoked the special status or a limited autonomy granted under Article 370 of the Indian Constitution to Jammu and Kashmir, a region administered by India as a state which consists of the large part of the Kashmir, which has been subject to the dispute among India and Pakistan. An Indian resolution of Kashmir issue considered as the unfinished agenda of partition as claimed by Pakistan appears to be a weak possibility. I think we have to look into this a very critical issue in the various perspectives. We have to see what Indian strategy of annexation that is not which they have done on 5th of August 2019. In 1948, two states, Junagadh and Hyderabad, were annexed with India, despite of the fact that both of states were willing to join Pakistan. And similarly, what happened in 1971. So this is the fourth atrocity which has been done by India. But we have to look into what Pakistan is doing on the Kashmir issue. If there are 2-3 options. One option was military option, but that option was not materialized because the Gibraltar operation of 1965 and then the Kargil operation, so which means the option for military has been ruled out. What about the diplomatic efforts which we have done after August 5th August 2019? I think the Pakistan has to do more efforts in penetrating the international community and to highlight this issue at the various forum. At least, although I understand the OIC is a teethless organizations, but at the level of the OIC, this has to be the issue has to be raised and a joint declaration to be issued. I take this opportunity to just a little contribution from Riphah International University. We have edited a book on Kashmir which shows the demographic shifts and the philosophy of Hindutva. And I would like to show the topics which has been covered in this book. So today is this day has created an opportunity for us in order to inaugurate this book from this August forum. These are the various topics which has been covered in the books. The regimes in Kashmir, Kashmir's Balfour Bargain, and the Quit Kashmir movement, Jammu massacre and systematic extermination, Kashmir demographic and its significance, Pandit and Sainik colonies, methods of altering the demography of Indian occupied Kashmir, human rights violations and legal tools, significance of Article 370, India-China wars and its implication, Indo-Pak war and Shimla agreement, rigged elections of 1987 by Indian administrations, violation of right of self-determination, abolishment of right of life, lawless law and its implementation, suppression of opinion and expression, snubbing right of practicing religion, punishment and cruel treatment towards Kashmiris, RSS, BJP agenda of altering Indian occupied Kashmir demography, settlement of West Pakistan refugee in Kashmir, allotment of Kashmir land to industrialist, refugee settlement in Kashmir, creation of Sainik soldiers colonies, special quota for Jammu and Kashmir doctors is snatched, Kashmir New Domicile Act April 2020, adoption of Israeli model in Kashmir, Kashmir versus Palestine conflicts, Hindutva desire of demographic change in Indian occupied Kashmir, and Kashmir disputes and risk of nuclear conflagrations in South Asia. Dr. Wali, please.
Thank you, Dr. Saab. You have given this background of the today's topic and the book which you are going to publish immediately after this conference. I will request Dr. Ghulam Nabi Faiz, Secretary General, World Evidence Forum, Washington, D.C. Dr. Faiz Saab, stage is yours, sir.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Anis Ahmad and Dr. Rashid Aftab for organizing this very important webinar on Kashmir. I was given the topic, the role of global Kashmiri diaspora in highlighting the Kashmir cause. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you that today it is not only the culture and language, but it is the national character of Kashmir that is at the brink of extinction because of the domicile law, which has been designed to change the demography of Kashmir, which has been designed to make the people of Kashmir minority in their own homes. And this is posing an existential threat to the nation of Kashmir. So the Kashmiri diaspora has only two choices. We have only two options. The option number one is either to hang on to our own organizations, or the option number two, that we must work with like-minded persons and like-minded organizations to face this challenge and pursue the Kashmir cause at the international scene. India is trying its best to delegitimize the struggle of Kashmir. In fact, Dr. Imtiaz Khan knows it well that India is creating an impression in Kashmir, particularly within the past 2 months, because of domicile law. Azadi is a dream. You cannot get the Azadi anymore. September is important because in September there is going to be the United Nations General Assembly. Dear brothers and sisters, how would you feel if during the General Assembly session no one is going to talk about the issue of Kashmir except Imran Khan sir? It will be a disaster for the cause of Kashmir. Then in September also we have the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva. How do you feel if except Pakistani ambassador, no one is going to make the intervention there? Because of the ill health of Gilani Saab, because of the detention of Muhammad Yasin Malik Saab, because of the house confinement of Mirwal Umar Farooq Saab, our leadership, we can understand it, they are inactive, they are not working the way we want them to work because of their limitation. But we have the alternate leadership which has the support of this leadership. We know them or we need to know them. Then we must lend all the strength we have in order to make them succeed.
We have here two special guests from who have huge sacrifices, and they are two stakeholders of the Kashmir. One is Ahmad Qasim, the son of Dr. Qasim, who is jailed since 22 years. and son of Asya Andrabi also. And also a Musair Manzoor, whose mother is currently in the Tihar jail. These both sons are here in this roundtable conference. They are our special guests here.
I thank Riphah International University, Dr. Anis Saab, Dr. Rasool Saab, and I'm honored to be among all these distinguished guests and speakers. During 73 years of occupation and 3 generations of continuous struggle for freedom, people of Indian-occupied Kashmir have proven that they will never compromise on anything short of achieving their goal, the freedom from Indian occupation. Although today's main focus will be on the 1 year of re-annexation of Kashmir after August 5th, India claims Kashmir to be its Atutang, and Pakistan calls it Sharag. India has proved it in last several years that it is their Atutang. Pakistan still have to prove its claim. Pakistan has always supported right to self-determination for people of Kashmir as per United Nations resolutions.
Evet, çok teşekkür ediyorum. Umarım bu forum Keşmir sorununun çözümü konusunda bir katkı sağlamış olsun.
First of all, I'd like to thank all of you, and I hope that this forum, this conference is going to make a good contribution towards the solution of this problem.
73 yıl sonra Keşmir sorununu konuşurken hala 1948'de Birleşmiş Milletler'in Keşmir halkının kendi kaderini tayin hakkı olduğunu karar altına almış olmasına rağmen bu konuda hiçbir mesafe alınmamış olması ya da hala bizlerin diplomasinin ve STK'ların bu konuda ortak bir hareket tarzı belirlemesi gerektiğini konuşuyor olmamız, Keşmir meselesinin Pakistan Anayasası'nda bir güvence garanti altına alınmamış olmuş olması ya da Birleşmiş Milletler nezdinde gerekli aktif girişimleri yeterince yapılamamış olması gerçekten çok üzücü.
Yeah, it has been 72 years, and yet, we are discussing about that topic. United Nations made some resolutions, but still, we are talking that the issue even has not been secured in Pakistani constitution, and we have failed, to reach a common consensus among all these non-governmental organizations defending Kashmiri cause. So it means at this point we also need to question ourselves. We also need to question our own position because we couldn't make a good progress.
Ben Türkiye'nin meseleye bakışı ve Türk halkının konuyla ilgisi bağlamında bir iki şey söylemek istiyorum.
But here I want to say we don't doubt our Turkish perspective. What is the perspective of Turkish government and what Turkish people feel of this problem? So I want to represent, Turkish people.
Türkiye ile Pakistan arasında diplomatik anlamda çok güçlü ilişkiler var. İki kardeş ülke olarak birbirimizi tanımlarız. Ve Pakistan'ın uluslararası anlamdaki sorunları ya da doğal afetler neticesinde karşılaştığı problemlere kendi ülkemizde olmuş ya da kendi ülkemizin sorunuymuş gibi sahipleniriz.
I mean, we regard Pakistan as a brother, as a sister country, and we think the problems of Pakistan are the problems of Turkey. So here, between the governments and between people, there is really a very intimate relationship between Pakistan and Turkey.
Ya bu konuda da Keşmir meselesinde de aynı duyarlılığı Türkiye göstermiş. Hatta son 2019 5 Ağustos'unda anayasanın ilgili maddesinin iptaliyle ortaya çıkan durum karşısında yine İslam İşbirliği Teşkilatı Keşmir Temas Grubu'nun 5 üyesinden biri olarak Keşmir konusunun İslam İşbirliği Teşkilatı da güçlü olarak destek veren bir ülke Türkiye.
So when the special status of Kashmir was terminated, so Turkey has been really sensitive on the issue, and Turkey tried to raise the issue within the, Islamic international Islamic cooperation. IOC, we say. So Turkey is really very sensitive on the issue in governmental level.
I am from Kashmir, and actually I visit Kashmir every year. This is the first time I'm not visiting Kashmir this year because of this COVID-19 pandemic. And I have seen the changes that occur in Kashmir before I came to America, and after that, when I continued to live in United States and visited my hometown every year. And Kashmir is a story of deceit and betrayal. People of Kashmir were betrayed when India and Pakistan was divided. According to the foundation laid for the basis of division of Kashmir, Kashmir with a Muslim majority should have been a part of Pakistan. But Lord Radcliffe changed the maps, and it was basically his friendship of Lord Mountbatten with Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru that the maps were concealed from the founder of Pakistan, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and Gurdaspur, an important district which should have gone to Pakistan, was given to India so that India gains access to Kashmir. Dr. Faiz said about the Gopala Rangalumaswamy, the ambassador Indian ambassador to United Nations, who basically took the case of Kashmir to United Nations and said that the fate of Kashmir will be decided by people of Kashmir. It was not only that, it was no less a person than Jawaharlal Nehru, who promised in the heart of Srinagar, the capital of Kashmir, to the people of Kashmir that the fate of Kashmir will be decided by Kashmiris themselves, whether they want to become part of India or whether they want to be part of Pakistan or they want to stay independent. Kashmir trusted the words of Indian leaders. They said that Kashmir will gain the right of self-determination at some point. There are a lot of parleys which took place between Indian and Pakistani government, especially in 50s and 60s. It could be in hundreds, especially there were interactions between then Pakistani Foreign Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto and Soren Singh. But nothing came out of those parleys. Why didn't anything come out of those discussions is that India was never honest to have an amicable solution which is acceptable to people of Kashmir. They had always eyes on Kashmir. They wanted it to integrate with the rest of the India. At one time, Kashmir had its own prime minister. They had their own Sadr Riyasat, which is called the president of the state. They had their own customs. Anybody who comes from India to Kashmir had to get a custom clearance at the airport and a temporary visa. But those laws were abolished by and without world knowing about them. They changed the nomenclature of the rulers of the Kashmir. And what was left was 370 and 35A. When people of Kashmir, the youth especially, was frustrated at the discriminatory attitude of the Indian government towards the people of Kashmir, there was a very struggle launched in 1989, but it was a youth movement. But what India did was unleashed a reign of terror on people of Kashmir. Until now, 150,000, especially the youth between 15 to 30 years of age, have been killed. 10,000 women have been raped. There are missing people. There are mass graves. Burhan Wani in 2016 was captured and martyred. People who came to demonstrate in his favor, protest against his cold-blooded murder, were sprayed with spray bloods, which we use in this country for deer hunting. Hundreds of youth lost their eyesight. Hospitals were attacked. Patients were beaten, doctors were beaten, and medical staff was not allowed to function. India has committed international crimes, and they have to be answerable. These are the crimes for which leaders have been punished.
I heard about Kashmir many years ago when I was a student in high school. But just let me give you some examples. When British Empire, invaded Egypt, so the first thing they did, they captured storytellers and they put storytellers in jail. Why? What was the importance of storytellers? Because stories remind the people of their great history. So sometimes one story can trigger a liberation movement in a country. So stories are really very powerful, and each story empowers another story. And when I'm writing the songs, for me, each song actually is a story. So I saw that the songs are kind of more powerful in terms of reaching more people. So that's why, when I heard about stories coming from Kashmir, my heart was really aching. I heard so many different stories, half orphans, half widows, So I heard the people losing their eyesight, the young people losing their eyes, and unfortunately the women being raped. So that's why I chose the way of raising the voice of Kashmiri people through a story. And Mr. Aziz Babushu, MP from Istanbul, when I consulted him, he said, yeah, this is a very good idea and we should do something. Then, we created that. And I didn't know that it was one of the first international works, in this field. So we also worked with Della Miles. Della Miles, in the past, she was a vocalist for Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston. So she didn't give only her voice, she also gave her heart. And I think the first time in the social media, I saw that there were so many actions to remove this song, to try to, YouTube has brought age restriction, and Twitter also, labeled the song as kind of sensitive content. So I can say, can a song change something? Sometimes when I talk with Mr. Babushu, because every time I talk about the oppressed people, and he says, oh, to guy, what are we going to do again? A new song about oppressed people. But I believe, a song can change so many things.
Kashmir Sorunu Dünya Kamuoyunu Duyurma Programı hazırlayan ve programa katılan hocalarıma teşekkür ediyorum ve saygılarımı arz ediyorum. Kur'an ve İslam davasına sahip çıkmıyoruz. Bana neme lazım diyoruz. Hindistan'da Hindular Müslüman katliamları aralıksız devam ediyor. Keşmir Müslümanların kanayan yarası, baskı ve zulüm had safhada. İsrail Filistin'i işgal ediyor, Filistinli ve Kudüs kan ağlıyor. Çin Doğu Türkistan'ı Uygar Müslüman Türkleri toplama kamplarında hapsediyor. Kadınlara hem işkence hem tecavüz eden Çin Cumhuriyeti tam anlamıyla soykırım yapıyor. Her Uygur ailenin evine Çinli erkek yerleştiriliyor. Bunun ne anlama geldiğini anlıyoruz değil mi arkadaşlar? Hakkı hakim kılmak için davaya sahip çıkmazsak bunları hep yaşarız. Güçlü olan Amerika yumruğunu masaya vuruyor. Afganistan'ı, Irak'ı, Suriye'yi, Yemen'i, Libya'yı işgal ediyor. Bu devletlerin bütün kaynaklarına el koyarak bütün gelir kaynaklarını sömürüyor. Bu devletlerin halkı açlık sınırında yaşıyor. Afrika kıtasını da talan eden Amerika bütün dünya kaynaklarını sömürüyor. Afrikalı acından ölüyor. Amerika Afrika'nın kanı içiyor. O da obez oluyor, ölüyor. Bu ne biçim dünya? Bakara suresi yeryüzünü kana bulayan Amerika ve Avrupa ülkelerini işgal talanlarını ve ne güzel anlatıyor. Onlara yeryüzünde bozgunculuk yapmayın denildiği zaman hayır biz ancak ıslah edeceğiz derler. Dikkat edin, onlar bozguncuların ta kendileridir fakat bunun farkına varmazlar.
Indeed, as has been known, there has never been any honest brokers, both in relation to Palestine and certainly in relation to Kashmir. What has happened over time is that more facts on the grounds have been created, and we cannot leave it to the governments of the US and certainly Israel, or indeed Mr. Modi's BJP RSS Hindutva, to continue to proceed apace. So I want to also clarify the fact that Hinduism and Hindutva are indeed diametrically opposed. Hindutva is the weaponized form of Hinduism, so there is nothing much in that regard that is holy or even religious. I want to continue that by saying that under Mr. Modi's regime, the policies and politics of oppression, dispossession, ethnic cleansing, war crimes, and a lot more have been committed before the eyes of the international community. Now, the international community is very much part and parcel of all of the international legal norms that have been formulated. Yet the international community seems to favor investment and trade over the primacy of life, and indeed over the primacy of upholding those legal norms that they are obliged to respect and uphold. So what Kashmir is in need of is not development, because once Kashmir attains whatever the will of the people of Kashmir decides to realize, is basically the right to self-determination, which is not just a basic but a fundamental right. And that right is enshrined in international law. So once that is achieved, the people of Kashmir will be able to go about devising their own policies, economic, financial, and etc., as all nation states do.
मुझे एक दफ़ा एक मौका मिला था किसी एक कॉन्फ्रेंस में, तो वहाँ एक साहब बात कर रहे थे कि कश्मीरी नस्ल जो है अब तो तीसरी नस्ल जा रही है, ये कोई मसला नहीं है, वहाँ बड़ा नॉर्मल है। मैंने कहा अगर तीसरी नस्ल जा रही है तो आपने 10 लाख फौज क्यों लगाई हुई है, क्या मसला है, किसकी चीज़ की ज़रूरत है? तो मैं उनको बताना चाहता हूँ कि तीसरी हो या चौथी नस्ल हो, हमारी जो नस्ल आएगी वो नए जज्बे के साथ आएगी। आसिया अंद्राबी जेल में हो या हमारी बहन जो है वो नाहिद नसरीन जेल में हो, तो उनके बेटे यहाँ हमारे साथ खड़े होके उनको सहारा देते हैं कि हम आज भी तैयार हैं, शहादत के लिए भी तैयार हैं, गाजी बनने के लिए तैयार हैं, जब तक मकसद हासिल नहीं होता तैयार हैं। और कौन सा मकसद? जो हमारे बुज़ुर्गों ने स्टार्ट किया था। और पाकिस्तान की सरजमीन के इस दारुल खिलाफे में बैठ के मुझे ये कहते हुए फ़ख्र हो रहा है कि जनाब पाकिस्तान जो है वो 14 अगस्त को बना, तो कश्मीरी ने तो 19 जुलाई 25 दिन पहले फैसला कर दिया था कश्मीर में आबी गुजर के मकाम पर गाजी मिल्लत सरदार मोहम्मद इब्राहिम खान, जो बाद में बानी सदर भी बने आज़ाद कश्मीर, वहाँ तय कर लिया था कि कश्मीर बनेगा पाकिस्तान। और अगर उस वक्त पाकिस्तान बना होता वो कहते हम पाकिस्तान हैं, उन्होंने कहा था कश्मीर बनेगा पाकिस्तान। पाकिस्तान बना 14 अगस्त, और वहाँ जिन लोगों ने ऐलान किया उन्होंने कोई देर नहीं की, उन्होंने अपनी जहादी कोशिश जारी रखी, आर्म स्ट्रगल शुरू कर दी, और फिर 24 अक्टूबर को आज़ाद कश्मीर को आज़ाद करा लिया, एक हिस्से को आज़ाद करा लिया, और आगे बढ़ रहे थे। और वो दूर नहीं था वो श्रीनगर पहुँच जाते। जब वहाँ उन्होंने स्टार्ट किया तो पलंदरी वो जगह जहाँ से मैं आज आया हूँ कि जहाँ उन्होंने पहला दारुल-खिलाफा भी कायम कर दिया, हुकूमत भी शुरू कर दी, गाजी मिल्लत सरदार मोहम्मद इब्राहिम बानी सदर भी बन गए, शहाबुद्दीन साहब जो है आपके सेक्रेटरी जनाब चीफ सेक्रेटरी भी बन गए, और हुकूमत शुरू हो गई। और 24 अक्टूबर को जब ये हुकूमत शुरू हो गई तो फिर भारत ने समझा कि हमसे कुछ जा रहा है, तो उन्होंने 27 अक्टूबर को एक्सेशन की जाके वो तकरारदाद एक जो है वो दस्तावेज लाए जो आज तक मशकूक है, जिसको वो साबित ही नहीं कर सके हैं पूरी दुनिया में। और जब समझा कि जनाब अब तो हमारे लिए कोई रास्ता नहीं है, तो वो दौड़ के जाके यूएनओ में वो पहुंचे थे, हम नहीं गए थे। यूएनओ में पहुंचे और कहा इस स्ट्रगल को रोकिए, हम इनका ये राइट मानते हैं। तो तब ये प्लेबिसाइट का राइट जो हमें मिला। आज की इस कॉन्फ्रेंस में जो कुछ कहा गया उसकी रोशनी में, और जो कुछ बाकी लोग हमारे साथ कर रहे हैं, और फिर 5 अगस्त को, आज 366 दिन पहले, आज 366वां दिन है हमारा, कश्मीर के वो भाई हमारे जिस अजाब से गुजर रहे हैं वो सबके सामने है। वक्त कम है, मैं इसलिए उस पर लंबी बात नहीं करता, लेकिन ये ख़त्म नहीं हो सकता। जो खून बह रहा है, मैं समझता हूँ हमारी नई नस्ल को वो खून लग रहा है और वो उसके लिए तैयार है। और मोदी साहब को मैं से इतना कहना चाहता हूँ कि एज ए लॉ स्टूडेंट हमने ये सुना था कि जनाब लॉ इज द ट्विस्ट ऑफ वर्ड्स which can be twisted either side। ये भी सुना था कि law is the nose of the wax which can be twisted either side। मोदी साहब आपने तो नया काम कर दिया कि lawless law भी होते हैं, कि law भी lawless होता है। और ये जो कुछ वो बना रहे हैं 370, 35, जो कुछ करें, जो मर्जी करें, इट्स ए लॉ विच इज लॉलेस, जिसके अंदर लॉ है ही नहीं। तो ये तो तीसरी टर्म आ गई, इसने हमें और जनाब जज्बा दे दिया कि एक ऐसा कानून जिसमें कानून ही नहीं है, वो हमारे लिए कैसे पाबंदी हो सकता है, वो हमारे उन बहन भाइयों के लिए कैसे पाबंदी, जिन्होंने सबसे पहले फैसला कर दिया था। और आज इस मौके पे मैं, जो कश्मीरियों के वकील हैं पाकिस्तान, उन्होंने जो एक काम किया कि अपने नक्शे में कश्मीर को अपना हिस्सा दिखा दिया। उन्होंने हमारी आवाज़ पे लब्बैक कहा, इसलिए लब्बैक कहा कि अब जनाब पाकिस्तान बनने से पहले 19 जुलाई को कश्मीरियों ने कह दिया था कश्मीर बनेगा पाकिस्तान। आप 14 अगस्त को आए, हम पहले पाकिस्तानी हैं और बाद में कश्मीरी हैं।
According to me, August 5th needs to be in a way celebrated rather than a black day, because this is the date of deliverance from India. Kashmiris should remember it as a date of deliverance from India, because all their narratives have been decimated on this day. The narrative of democracy, the narrative of secularism, the narrative of their economy, and the narrative of their justice. And this is very important because the secessionists or the occupational apologists like National Conference and other parties who were the representatives of India there in Kashmir are now going to try to subject this 5th August because 370 is there. 370 was already finished. The only thing was the 35A, wherein they have now been able to get in people, and so I want to basically focus on my challenges and options, because I have written a very detailed paper on the subject, which is your Kashmir reannexation and status quo. But for example, August 5th, on the date of August 5th, the democracy for Kashmiris is finished because they never gave 1 to 370 or not, or 335A should be removed or not. So this was their one part. And another thing that the people otherwise in the rest of the world do not understand, that after now, whatever the elections have happened in Indian-administered Kashmir have happened under the gun, because under the shadow of the gun, every election of the up to now has happened like that. And they have, once the election finishes, they tell after a certain period of time that some party tells that this has happened already. So same is regarding secularism. If you ask any Indian Muslim today what is Indian secularism, he will repent that he followed Maulana Kalam Azad at that time in 1947, so that he stayed back in India. So we don't need to speak much about secularism as such. But you can see the domicile law which they have introduced is basically to finish our Muslim majority. And there was recently a report in a newspaper regarding the role of police in India, in the Delhi riots. And Hindu youth gave his statement that how he was allowed by the Indian police to do whatever he likes. till the higher authorities tell him to stop. So till then he had burnt a number of houses, number of cars and other things. So this is the fate of communalism in India all the time. I have friends in business circles, for example, in Moradabad, where this cycle goes on. Once they become slightly better, there is a communal right. They come again down to zero. Then they have to again rebuild their life. And this is now happening in Kashmir. This is what they are doing now in Kashmir. For example, all our economy is like that. Now we have our businessmen. For example, if I was a very big businessman in 1990s, I went down, I have to rebuild the whole business, and again the circle will come. And again, this generation by generation, these businessmen will again become like that, because they did not want the J&K government, for that matter, the Kashmiri people, to become self-reliant.
Actually, India is gaining time. He has put on one hand the pressure on and threat of war against Pakistan, and on the other hand, India is trying best to win the hearts of the Kashmiri, regional and the international community. Pakistan has shown and demonstrated the aggressive policy against India by changing the name of the old roads from Kashmir Highway to Srinagar Highway. The Kashmir Banaspati to Srinagar Banaspati may not be effective. So far, India is facing hard time to legislate the removal of Article 370. However, as long as the Article 370 is concerned, India has no legal and ethical right to remove the Article 370.
We are from third generation, but still we are passing through the trauma of annexation of Kashmir, and my family is a survivor of Jammu genocide of 1947, which is the least reported genocide of the world. So first of all, what happened on last year on 5th August 2019? India lost its pro-Indian Kashmiris within the Indian occupied Kashmir, because annexation of Kashmir was an agreement between the pro-Indian Kashmiris and the Indian government. Pakistan, since day one, neither accepted annexation document. So Article 370 Article 370's inculcation in the Indian Constitution was never been accepted by Pakistan. So what's wrong when India revoked 370? The wrong thing is that as per Shimla Agreement, India or Pakistan cannot unilaterally change the status of Kashmir. And by revoking Article 370, India changed the status of Kashmir. So that is why there is an effective debate that if Shimla Agreement is still relevant, and if it is not relevant, then what next? What India and Pakistan should do. While writing, as my book has been referred, my book Shaking Hands with Clenched Fists, the Grand Trunk Road to Confidence Building My Years Between Pakistan and India, I interviewed Khurshid Kasuri and I asked him a simple question, that what made, during Musharraf regime, what made Khurshid Kasuri and the Indian government to break stereotypes on Kashmir? And his answer was one-liner. He said, we replaced politics with humanity. And our basic concern while formulating that resolution formula was to address the human misery in the conflict, and in spite of settling political scores against each other. And this reminds me when Atal Bihari Vajpayee, the guru of BJP, whose follower ideally should be Modi, but he is an antidote or counter narrative of Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Atal Bihari Vajpayee in Kashmir, he stated that there only a three-pronged strategy can resolve Kashmir and address the grievances of Kashmiris, and that three-pronged strategy was Insaniyat, Jamhuriyat and Kashmiriyat. It means humanity, democracy and Kashmiri identity. And unfortunately, by revoking Article 370, Modi attacked all three of them. Modi regime, neither they care about the democratic right of Kashmiri people, and without their consent, without asking them, without even asking the pro-Indian Kashmiris, Modi revoked it unilaterally. And that is why all Mehbooba Mufti, the pro-Indian Kashmiri, the pro-BJP Kashmiri, the ally, actually her father gave space to BJP to enter in the domestic politics of Kashmir. So she is still house arrest in Kashmir, even after 1 year. So the other thing is Kashmiria. Through revoking Article 370, they are planning demographical change to dilute the Kashmiri identity and Kashmiriyat of the Kashmir conflict. And the third thing is insaniyat, humanity. And we all know, even UNO has acknowledged, or all international organizations and governments, that Kashmir is suffering from gross human rights violation. No one is safe. And recently, an addition to that such gross violation of human rights is latest law accepted or launched by Modi regime, that government of India can fire any government officer in Kashmir without an inquiry under the charges of anti-state activities. And what are those anti-state activities? Their assertion to secure their basic right to self-determination, which is not at all, which is basic human rights. Neither right of expression is any anti-state activity, or nor right to choose is any anti-state activity. And under this law was accepted on 30th July, and 500 Kashmiri people who were working with the government, they've been fired from their jobs. So I wonder, as a student of conflict resolution and South Asian politics, I wonder that what Modi regime wants to do. Their policies have put Kashmir on the forefront of not only politics of India-Pakistan, but at the forefront of all the peace or status quo maintenance efforts of international security. Kashmir is not the nuclear flashpoint for South Asia, but Kashmir will cause instability across the globe. And that instability's biggest stakes in that instability or change of status quo are of the USA, who is the sole beneficiary of that international status quo. And we should not forget the Second World War, when change in international status quo shrinked Great Britain into United Kingdom. So these are the repercussions which world leaders should need to understand, and they should address. So now, what is the way forward for Kashmir? Number one, the role of Kashmiri diaspora is extremely important. As someone said, that they need to unite, they need to come work under one umbrella. And this reminds me the Sikh diaspora, who are without any differences and without any so effectively standing by the Khalistan movement. So this resolution needs to be demonstrated by Kashmiri diaspora. They need to, they should take the lead in reaching out different international organizations, international law organizations, and to raise the actual concerns of Kashmiri people, and which are that since last 5th August, as Modi tried to fool the world that this revocation of Article 370 is for the economic development of Kashmir, and since last year 5th August, Kashmir has lost 40,000 crores in economic losses. 5 lakh Kashmiris, 500,000 Kashmiris have lost their jobs. So we, as we say, we need to lead the narrative. We need to highlight all those things. We need to tell the world. And for me, as a student of Kashmir, as a Kashmiri, it was really encouraging to see that all international media and major papers have added features or reports on Kashmir on the completion of 1 year of the revocation of Article 370. So what is the way forward? Number one, Kashmiri diaspora should lead the discourse. They should work on developing the discourse, and discourse development is not piece of cake. It needs capacity building. It needs your command on the subject and the issue and the history. Superficial, artificial command, or whatever we say, words, vocabulary we use that become our identity. And that is why when we want to lead the discourse, we need to be super careful that what vocabulary we are using and how we are projecting our case. I wonder, for me being a Kashmiri woman, it is actually discouraging that the plight of Kashmiri women and Kashmiri audibility of women, female voices from Kashmir is missing from the discourse. I want Kashmiri women to come on the forefront and take lead in developing the discourse. And this reminds me, a great Kashmiri scholar, Miss Natasha Kaul. She teaches at University of Westminster in UK, and she was asked by the US Congress to come and share the plight and the case of Kashmir. So I don't want Kashmir to look like a communal conflict. It is not. All Kashmiris want their access to right to self-determination, and everyone is one when it comes to get rid of the Indian occupation and oppression. So we need to build capacity. Number two, when we need layers of leadership, tiers of leadership. When we see, as someone mentioned, who are the Kashmiri leaders, there are 3-4 names which I am listening, and I really respect them. But since my childhood, these are the only names we see when it comes to Kashmir. I want to see who is the second layer or second tier of the leadership. So there should be second and third and fourth tier and well coordinated and connected tiers of leadership, so that we can pick the movement and we can work for it. And number 3, I want more. I want capacity building and more enhancement of the quality of the government of Azad Jammu and Kashmir. They need to be, because they are the actually legal representative of Kashmiris. So they need to build their capacity. They need to build their command over languages. They need to share with the world that how Kashmiris have been oppressed. So that should be a mixture of practitioners, politicians and academicians, so that our point is valid for every school of thought across the globe.
Today we are commemorating the day of the Kashmiris who are under siege. So we are commemorating this Yawm-e-Istihsal. And I think that this is the right time when this seminar is being convened. I have observed this thing that the movement is same, that we all are having one same destination, but I have observed that there are differences. So we need to eliminate that, because history shows, you can see French Revolution, you can see even American Revolution, there were even differences within people, but these differences can weak your movement. So I would like to suggest that first we need to focus on this particular point. We need to end the differences so that we can, in an effective way, we can communicate or we can convey our message to the world. My second point is that we should not ignore these multilateral approach, because we have several organizations. We have already seen that in SARC, we were not able to present our case effectively. So that's why we are standing over here, and still we are not in this position to solve this issue on tables. But please don't take this impression that organizations cannot solve this issue. To me, the purpose of this movement is since independence, so we should use each and every platform. So I think that Shanghai Cooperation Organization, this is the right platform where Pakistan can present its case, and India is indeed over there, and India is having so many problems, and there are some loopholes from Indian side. So we should use Indian weakness as our strength. I would also like to talk about this CAA and NRC, which recently India imposed on its citizens. So this has revealed its real face to the entire world community, and the drama of this secularism, this has been ended. So I think that these weaknesses, we all should highlight that. One more point, please, that we should establish Pakistani students lobbies all over the universities. So this I want to add because I have so many other points, but since the time is short, so hope to see you people again on another platform. Allah Hafiz. And at the very end, I would like to say that every black cloud has silver lining, and inshallah, soon we will attain independence.
It's quite clear that what the Indian government is doing at the moment is to change the demographics of occupied Kashmir so that instead of being a Muslim majority state, they can say it's now no longer a Muslim majority state, and therefore it can be and should be part of India, which is why they passed these regulations recently, which for the first time allowed people outside occupied Kashmir to be able to come in and buy lands, take jobs, and live there without any problems, something that was not allowed beforehand, and the government has changed this. Then, of course, you've got the regulation which now divides occupied Kashmir into two parts. So again, so that the Indian government can take over and run it as part of India. To me, these are very dangerous legal changes, because what India is doing is trying to effectively, as an international law, de facto make it part of India, so that in future people trying to separate it from will have legal as well as other difficulties and complex challenges. Of course, on top of that, you have the whole issue of the human rights abuses, the lockdown that's taking place, the fact that somebody can be arrested from their home, taken to prison, hear nothing what's going on, families no idea what happened to their loved ones. People can be kept in prison for ages, and then as the years expire, they can re-arrest them again without any reason. I mean, this is breaching human rights at every level. Now, I suppose the question here is, I'm sure what I have said, everybody is aware of this information. The question is, what do we do about it? And obviously, the issue of Kashmir has to be resolved. As a parliamentarian in the United Kingdom, I have for many, many years raised this issue in the House of Commons. At Prime Minister's questions, I've raised it with our successive different Prime Ministers about the issue of Kashmir, with the Foreign Secretary, and a number of meetings with even some of the junior foreign ministers. The British government approach seems to be that this is India and Pakistan matter. That they said, according to the Shimla Accord, this is a bilateral issue, and the British government used that as an excuse and a shield to hide away from dealing with the issue of Kashmir. Now, we have said to them that this is not good enough, that basically the problem of Kashmir is because of the British Empire, and the British government has a moral, if not legal, obligation to resolve this issue. And we do refer to the international UN resolutions which say that the issue of Kashmir has to be resolved, and therefore to use the Shimla agreement as an excuse to get out of not doing anything is wrong. Now, again, we have two challenges. One is the legal determination and the status of Kashmir, which I think is going to be something which is going to be taking a long time to resolve. But we have the immediate issue of the human rights abuses which are taking place. At this rate, we're saying that let's concentrate on the human rights abuses, because we have a little bit more, possibly easier time to convince our government, because human rights abuses do not require an international convention. So when we raise the issue of human rights abuses, our government minister's response is, our ambassador in India is speaking to the Indian government authorities, that we're speaking to the Indian government as well. But sadly to say that our government in the United Kingdom does not show any interest in trying to get into this matter or persuade other countries internationally to get involved. I think what we need to do, Pakistan, with its friendly countries in the world, get them on board to raise this issue internationally, because the way it looks, right, the matter is not going to be resolved unless it's done at an international level. Until powerful countries in the world come together and pressurize India.
I've been asked to talk about Palestine today, and I've learned a lot about Kashmir, and I will very quickly in 3 minutes try to talk about status engineering as a colonial strategy by Israel. Basically, since Israel, just like Kashmir, the conflict in Palestine has started because of the United Kingdom and because of the British colonial policy that started in 1917 when they promised the Jews of the world of a Jewish homeland in Palestine, and then then they occupied Palestine, took the mandate over Palestine, and designed this situation where more and more Jewish immigration was coming to Palestine, changing the demographic situation as well. And but by the end of the 1947, 1948, by the end of the mandate, the British mandate, still the Jewish population of Palestine was only 70%. Sorry, 30%, and the Palestinian population was 70%. So the Jewish population was a minority in Palestine. So what happened is that the UK decided to end its mandate and to eventually a war erupted in which Israel was established as the state, and during this war Israel displaced 80% of the Palestinian population in the areas where it was established. And in that situation, Israel also gave the 20% of Palestinians an Israeli citizenship, and then all the rest who were displaced forcibly from their homes, who became the Palestine refugees, scattered in refugee camps around the world, they were prevented from their right of return. They were prevented from citizenship, and Israel created a special law known as the Prevention of Infiltration Law that would simply criminalize their attempt to return to their homes. After that, in 1967, Israel occupied the remaining part of the occupied of Palestine, the 22% that was left of Palestine. And in that war, also 30% of the population were displaced. And Israel created new residency statuses for the population who live in the occupied territory. They immediately annexed the eastern part of Jerusalem. You hear about it mostly as East Jerusalem, and gave the population that remained and was not displaced during the war a residency status, not a citizenship, and also gave two other types of residency statuses to the people of the West Bank and Gaza. But over the years, Israel has been revoking these residency statuses from, especially from Jerusalem, but also from the West Bank and Gaza until 1994. But they still continue to revoke from Jerusalem. They have been revoking more residencies. But also they have been preventing children from getting that residency status in Jerusalem. They have been putting restrictions on family unification in order to control the demography. So this demographic control has been an important part of the Israeli policy. It has been fragmenting the Palestinian population into different types of people with different colors of their ID cards, sometimes without having access to each other. And so forth.
Kashmiri people are facing immense difficulties, pain and persecution under the continuous military siege, 1 year in particular, but it's been almost 7 decades of military siege. Women lost their honor, kids lost their eyesight, youngsters lost their lives, and elders lost their everything, but they never give up. Kashmir is an internationally recognized dispute, and it is also recognized that the Kashmiris are fighting for the right of self-determination. which is their basic and birthright. This right is world's most popular right in present era, so world should come forward to support the people of Kashmir. Lastly, in addition to the drastic span of years in the history of Kashmir, I would put this question to entire world and human rights organizations since August 5 had set off the process-free constitutional denudation of J&K in cross disregard for the sentiment in Kashmir Valley with abrogation of the J&K constitution along with that of the Article 370, Kashmiris remains under a suffocating tight leash since then, and what role world is playing to get relief for innocent Kashmiris.
कश्मीर के अंदर आर पार जितनी भी मुख्तलिफ आइडियोलॉजी हमने, जो सबसे बड़ा मसला कश्मीर का, जिस तरह भी हमारी बहनें बात भी की है कि हमें जिस एक मकसद को फोकस करना चाहे था सेल्फ डिटर्मिनेशन का, उसको हमने वेस्टेड इंटरेस्ट के तहत मुख्तलिफ नजरियात में बांट के रखा है। इसलिए हमारा जो हाथ है कभी मुक्का नहीं बन सका। हमारी ताकत किसी एक नुक्ते पे हम इसको इस्तेमाल नहीं कर सके। अब जिस तरह यहाँ पे बात की गई कि जो मेन स्ट्रीम पार्टीज की इंडियन पॉलिटिक्स में, जिनका असल में ये कॉन्ट्रैक्ट था बिटवीन इंडिया एंड द मेन स्ट्रीम पार्टी इन जम्मू कश्मीर, वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट टूटा है और जो डिसअपॉइंटमेंट उनको मिली है, मैं कहता हूँ कि इस वक्त हमारे लिए रियल सोर्स ये है कि कश्मीर के अंदर जो हम मैदान में है, अस्करी एतबार से, सियासी एतबार से, ये एक कॉमन टर्म का जो असूल है दुनिया में, हमेशा ये कारगर रहा है। और ये जो इंटरेस्ट बिटवीन कश्मीरी पैदा हुआ है, जिसमें हम सारे स्टेक होल्डर्स हैं, इवन कि इसमें नेशनल कॉन्फ्रेंस, कांग्रेस, महबूबा मुफ्ती, जिस तरह बात की, सारे हम इसमें स्टेक होल्डर्स हैं। तो हमें इस बात पे कंसेंसस कम अज कम अगर है, इसके हमें अकॉर्ड करना चाहिए, हमें एफर्ट करनी चाहिए कि हम कहीं एक प्लेटफार्म पे, मेरे ख्याल में हिंदुस्तान को सबसे ज्यादा मौसर अगर कोई चीज हो सकती है इस वक्त, इस 370 और 35 को दोबारा इम्प्लीमेंट करने के लिए, वो हिंदुस्तान का इंटरनल प्रेशर है कि वहाँ पे। और इस वक्त हमारे लिए ये खुशकिस्मती कि हिंदुस्तान के अंदर बहुत सारी पार्टीज ऐसी है, हिंदुस्तान के अंदर एक विजिबल क्वांटिटी में लोग मौजूद हैं जो इस मोदी डॉक्ट्रिन को गलत समझते हैं, इसको एक नाइंसाफी और गैर कानूनी चीज समझते हैं। मेरे ख्याल में वो हमारे लिए एक बहुत ही बड़ा सोर्स है और इसके लिए हमें जो बुनियादी इख्तिलाफात हमारे दरमियान है, उनको साइड पर रखते हुए इस एंगल से भी इस चीज को देखना चाहिए, और जो बहुत ही मुअस्सर हो सकता है इस चैलेंज से निपटने के लिए और 370 और 35 को री-इम्प्लीमेंट करने के लिए, ये भी एक एंगल है।
We need to start to educate the very communities that we come from, because this is a crisis. It cannot be that in the year 2020, this is still an issue on the agenda. We need to mobilize from the grassroots level up, and it takes every single one of us to ensure that justice prevails. And that includes the fact that we require and need that community organizations throughout the world continue to put Kashmir on the agenda and start to push our own governments, our leaders, and to those around us who have places of influence and policy, that we use those to fight for justice, and that we ensure that years from now, we're not having this very same discussion on the 5th of August every year, but we are looking back on how we have worked towards ensuring that the self-determination of the Kashmiri people is ultimately what we have achieved.
Thank you very much. I am to extend my sincere thanks to all the participants, our distinguished experts who have shared their valuable thoughts, as well as given us some of the very unique ideas, or and those ideas and the points can build a narrative for the Kashmir. But I absolutely endorse some of the comments which has been given by our what concrete steps as a Muslim Ummah or at the level of Pakistan is undertaking when we see there is no Kashmir policy, there is no a national consensus or a Muslim consensus on the Kashmir issues. Only I think 3-4 countries on the face of the earth like Malaysia, Iran and Turkeys are there, from where we get some kind of a support, and as per Barrister Nawaz Saab, and that support is also restricted up to the lip service. So what is the way forward? It's very hard to determine what a strategy which must be pursued, so that that Kashmir issue may be resolved to some extent. I think we need some kind of steps which are economic in nature, which are to some extent maybe military in nature, and diplomatic in nature, and that combined can give some success to some extent. And I again to extend my sincere thanks to the participants who are present over here as well as around the world for participating in this very unique conference, which is very much in context with the today's day, and hopefully that we are looking forward to develop some kind of a common narrative for the Kashmir, and which is right now, which is full of contradictions and the conflicts, etc. I am also to extend my thanks to our IT team. In fact, they have really worked hard for developing a complete conference portal for conducting this conference. For the last couple of days, they are working on it, and they make it sure that there must not be a connectivity issue. They made it sure that all the things in accordance with the webinars must be compliance in accordance with our requirement. And thank you.